just want to join up on the otherwise you're fine where you are.
We got open
Um,
seats. You wanna come up again? Okay,
but
thanks.
But hello, my name is Scott Heacock. I'm with Vanderwall and Associates. We work as economic development consultants for the village and also for this particular project. We are working for a grant funded by the DNR. So we have two folks from DNR here with us tonight, and we'll go over that a little bit more in a few moments. So today we're going to talk a bit about what this project is, go over some of our initial, we did some initial research into economic trends in Port Edwards, go a little bit into the background of the properties that we're talking about today, and do a activity for understanding what the preferred vision from the community is for these properties that we're here to talk about. To start off, I'd just like to get a sense of everybody that's in the room. So I think if we can start over here and go around, just a quick introduction of who you are and what brought you here.
My name is Betsy Mansell and I am the village president.
Jen Moore, village trustee.
Kayla McGregor, the vice president of the village and United Methodist pastor in Townsville.
Candy Pond, DNR Brownfield specialist.
I'm Michael Prager with the DNR Remediation and Redevelopment Program.
Lifetime resident.
Rick House, current resident, previous resident.
I'm Dwayne Gow, the interim administrator, as I call myself, a fly-in.
We have Tiara Grundon online too. She's a trustee as well.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Tira.
Hello.
So, quick overview here. The village received a grant from the DNR to study the reuse and redevelopment potential of specifically looking at the northern portion of the former mill area. We'll go over later, some reasons why that area in particular was important to look at. But in short, there were two buildings that were given over to the county on back taxes. So there's a little bit more control over that area, and the original reuses envisioned for them are no longer necessarily viable. And so it requires a little bit of new thinking about what can happen on those properties. Candy and Michael, do you want to jump in with a little bit more about what DNR's role is?
Yeah, I mean, we both work in the program where we try to help communities clean up and redevelop old factories and gas stations and properties like this. And so we get funding from EPA to help out with our work, and they had this special pot of money for smaller cities to help with this kind of thing, coming up with like kind of some plans on how to reuse these properties. And we had been working, we were aware of this project for a long time because so Domtar did a remediation of the whole thing. They did an assessment, and so this is one of the good things that at least you guys have going for you, is that they did a thorough assessment of the whole property and did some cleanup in a few areas, and they got our approval and they got a liability exemption. So if someone buys it, they wouldn't have to worry very much about environmental, contamination or any historical stuff, because it's all been pretty much well understood. Some of there's still some stuff remaining, but you just have to, there's some, what we call them, continuing obligations, some requirements to maintain a cover over a few areas, things like that. But that's pretty common and it shouldn't be a big impediment to reuse. But if someone wants to reuse the properties, and so first, depending on where on the property, they might need to get, or on the main mill, get DNR approval for some of the plans and stuff. So yeah, I mean, we're just kind of here to listen and help. I mean, I've worked with a lot of communities that have been doing this for a long time across the state on similar kind of projects. And you're in good hands with Vanderwall, because I've worked with Scott and the other Scott, who also works at Vanderwall, on a few projects. They did a similar one in Prairie du Chien that is pretty successful already, where they got the same pot of money to do some redevelopment planning. So I guess that kind of covers it. Yeah, I mean, the environmental contamination issues, like I said, have all been addressed and investigated and all that stuff. So that's good, because some other places have that on top of all the other challenges. So I think you're in good position to move forward.
Great. And just quick overview of some of the key tasks that we're hoping to accomplish with the overall project is public input like this. and talking to stakeholders of the surrounding, property owners to get a sense of, uh, get their thoughts on the vision, for what this area can be. We have an architect on staff that is looking through some old condition reports and just the overall layout of these buildings to see what reuse the existing structures could have, if any. They may be too far gone to be reused, but if they can be, we want to understand, okay, what is actually viable and realistic, for those.
You identify the buildings so that.
Oh, yes,
You're wonderful, I understand what you're talking about.
yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So in particular, this is the mill, site. You'll see down here is the main paper mill, shipbuilding warehouse. We're primarily focusing on, there's a computer data center and, the administration building are the two main focuses for, this project, while also trying to consider the things that are going to be happening around it. Quick other things that we're going to cover is just some local market conditions, infrastructure of the property, and recommended reuses. We're going to put together some concept plans based on the overall vision for, all right, we have an idea of what these could be. Let's actually, see what it looks like on the property, to inspire a vision. And an implementation plan to make sure that can actually happen. So set out next steps for the village. So as I mentioned, that's the project focus area. Surrounding the buildings is a warehouse that's owned by Artron Properties, where there's Milk Specialties Global that is currently operating out of there. North of the site is the YMCA, which there's the new YMCA that was recently built in Wisconsin Rapids. So usage of this one has diminished a bit. And also there are parts of the building that are just no longer in good condition, so they're closed off to the public. And south is the big elephant in the room of DMI owns the mill building. And I'll go over a little bit of history of the mill building in a second here. One thing I want to make sure I point out is these two buildings were given to the county on back taxes. The computer data center was already bought by an investor that's come in and has some plans for what he sees for that. The admin building, only half of the building is owned by Wood County and the other half is still owned by DMI. So you can see that the parcel ownership is split there. One of the things in this project that we're going to try to figure out is how to reconcile that and get it all in the same parcel again so it can be reused, because two different owners, it's just nothing's going to happen on that site. And that's just a zoomed in version of that area. Not to dwell on it for too long, but a quick history of the mill. 2008, it closed. DMI purchased it in 2013 and began demo in 2014. The demo contractor went bankrupt. And so that halted demolition on the property. 2017, DMI sold the warehouse. 2022, they weren't paying their property taxes on those two other buildings. And so those went to the county. And very recently in December of 2023, somebody purchased the computer data center. And one thing we're expecting in the near future is DMI has started talking to the village again about finishing the demolition on the mill building in 2024. That would be pending a permit from the village. And they would need to sign a development agreement with their end of the bargain. So we are cautiously optimistic that they will be following through on that. As part of our work with the village, we are trying to work them through that process as quickly as possible. So the big overall question to answer for this project is, for those two buildings, what reuses are most appropriate, fit the public's priorities, and are also economically feasible? Looking at the broader Wisconsin Rapids area, employment, you can see for the paper and packaging industry has steadily gone down over time.
Color amazing.
Green.
Okay.
And transportation logistics is the next biggest industry, has actually surpassed it, and total employment is going that direction. Despite the big loss of jobs from the paper mill closure, and that initial hit that happened in unemployment in the broader Wisconsin Rapids, Marshfield micropolitan area, which is basically Wood County. Unemployment now is around 3.5%, which is pretty good. Economists usually peg 5 to 6% as full employment. So there's actually most people in the area that want jobs probably have jobs. But as I noted earlier, transportation logistics has been the most growing industry in the region. But they are not one of the top high wage industries. So the paper and packaging jobs that were lost were higher wage. And so as far as if there is job recruitment on the properties, it would likely make sense to try to focus on some of the higher wage industries versus trying to just go for sheer number of jobs in the area, because unemployment rate is low. And we'd like to try to replace some of the higher income jobs that have. One thing that some stakeholders have talked to us about is the potential for housing on the site. So we looked at the overall age of housing within the village. And the housing stock is pretty old overall. Housing before, 1979, 1989, more likely to have asbestos or lead paint or other types of issues. And there's not been a lot of recent construction. So there's certainly a need for newer housing in the community overall. And that is shown by some of the vacancy rates that we see in the village. So vacancy rate is an indicator that economists use to understand supply and demand of housing in the community. You want a little bit of vacancy so new people can move in, but not so much vacancy that you have a lot of units that are not being used. 2% is usually the happy medium for owner occupied, and throughout the entire state, in particular in Port Edwards, that rate is pretty low, which is a good starting indicator that, yes, there is demand for new housing in the community. So to summarize, there has been declines in the paper industry. Those trends, along with other reports that have been done in the region for other similar communities, point to a need to focus on other sectors. But overall, low unemployment shows that if we are trying to recruit jobs to the community, it'd be wise to focus on those high wage jobs versus just trying to get the sheer largest number of jobs possible. There's clear demand for newer housing. And one other thing to note is there's a challenging market nationally for office space. So, if, not to say that's impossible, but generally speaking, new build offices are harder to finance in recent years. So reorienting ourselves to the project focus area. The previous vision was to relay out some of the parcels here to reconcile, as I talked about earlier, there are parcel lines running through the admin building. This is DMI's proposal for it. And before it was all supposed to be manufacturing or research of some sort. Zooming in on the area, this is what that looks like for those areas specifically around the mill. And if DMI follows through with their plans, the neighbor directly south of these buildings is going to be some sort of manufacturing or industrial use. This is a concept sketch they shared in 2018. They have communicated that their plan is going to be relatively similar to this, where there would be truck bays on the south side of the building. And that larger building you see back there is the administration building.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
With their considering that being still warehousing or planning portion, what would be the entrance to that? If in future, would it be off the back side or?
I think they have a couple different entrances.
Okay.
The idea would be to split it up into multiple buildings. So internally it would be, to different tenants. So rather than one tenant renting the whole thing,
Okay,
it'd be individual tenants for different spots. Previously, the administrative building was intended for a research center. The hope was that this would, spur a move to, study more of, the pulp, paper, and agriculture-related industries. That ultimately did not come to fruition. There were partnerships formed with the Forest Products Lab, UW Stevens Point, and others. Ultimately, nobody really took the torch and carried that, and there was a variety of reasons that didn't come to fruition, but our assessment is that is not likely to happen in the near future, so there's a need to rethink what could happen with that particular parcel. Similarly, the computer data center, the original hope was to reuse it as a data center of some sort. A couple folks took a look at it over the past 10 years or so, and that has not come to fruition. But as I mentioned, there is someone who has bought that property recently and plans to use it for some sort of industrial manufacturing use, would be what we expect out of that. Our initial assessment of some of the challenges and opportunities with it are, it's pretty close to industrial uses. Usually housing and industry are not necessarily compatible next to each other, but that always depends on the exact layout of things. So we think we can try to reconcile that, but that's a noted challenge. As our friends from the DNR mentioned earlier, there's environmental contamination on the property surrounding it. These particular buildings don't seem to have that aside from asbestos within the buildings themselves, but on older manufacturing areas, there's always a chance of that. General economic trends throughout the community, and in particular, the high cost of demolition, especially with asbestos throughout the buildings, that'll be challenging. But there's also opportunities. It is really close to Nefco Pond. The admin building gives access to the pond, so there could be some cool opportunities there to provide some public access to that. We've noted some recent interest from investors in these properties, so there's a real chance that something could happen. These properties are pretty well poised for grants to help with implementation. And the village state statute requires that a TID has to be less than 12% of your overall value. The village is well below that right now, so there would be potential, if the village so chose, to create a TID district that could help fund some activities on these properties. So we're nearing the end of me talking. I'm sorry for the long spiel, but we need input because we can only look at a map so much and try to figure out what should happen here, but we want to hear from folks that live here of what your priorities are for the area over the next 10 to 20 years. Are there public amenities that should be included in the plan? And appropriate uses and challenges and opportunities you see. So I'm going to pass these around real quick. If you can take one of, give you a handful. And give you the other half. Sorry.
Take them just a little.
I got to hand out some maps. Yes. And then, does anybody need a pen?
Can I get the maps?
Oh, yeah.
Here.
I'll get one for Eric and Tier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cool. So, you guys have pens? Yeah. All right. So the first step here is filling out the worksheet. I'll just quick walk through some of the questions here. First, want to hear from folks, more broadly about the mill area. If you have a personal connection and why it's important, I think a nice part to include in the plan would be some personal stories about, your connection to the area. We want to know those top priorities, to see, to gauge broadly in this area or also more generally for the village, what are, things that you think are important for us to focus on. Those public amenities I was talking about. And then going more specifically into each building, based on your understanding of them, what would be useful. The maps I shared are the property ownership maps, so it shows who owns what. And then the parcel lines map for what the current parcel lines are versus what we anticipate the future parcel lines to be.
We have two trustees who aren't here right now. If we give them these, can we have them just send that to you?
Thanks for it.
When you, have on here creating new healthcare and then douche facilities, what do you kind of in mind you thinking of?
If there's a need for like a health clinic of some sort
Okay.
or government facility of, any other sort.
All right.
Yeah.
Elderly housing. That'd be creating new housing, that would be considered elderly housing?
Like a nursing home, I think is what Scott's going for.
Or-
One a little closer.
You sound like I'm pretty dang old. You could talk.
Well, we're going to move it at the same time.
Yeah.
Or like a, dental clinic or a
Okay.
specialist or anything of that sort.
I got a question. I don't know if someone else can help me here. I'm not from the community, but I find it very interesting. It's like create a public access on Nepco Pond. Is that Nepco Pond bound right? Is that controlled by DMI or is that, because I look at the maps, a lot of the pond, the islands got, oh, not DMI. I'm sorry, the wrong one. Yeah, what's it? Downtown, yeah. That's,
I believe all waterways are public
okay.
in Wisconsin.
If you can get to them.
You can get to them. So now we have lakefront access that's publicly owned.
All over the water,
Yeah.
in particular.
You're talking about Nepco Pond, you're really talking about the mill pond right out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because Nepco Lake is a
Oh,
different.
sorry, man, might have got that very wrong, but yeah, the pond that is between the two dams.
My history
Yeah.
versus the mill pond.
Mill pond,
They
got
have
it.
water to the dam.
Got it. Thanks.
And that's what I've always heard as the mill pond.
Sorry.
Mill
Thank you.
pond.
That's helpful.
Oh, taped, yes.
Open the gates of the
Like-
dam and farm code.
Because the hydros are.
As I found out when I was a kid.
Do they drain that pond at all?
It goes low once in a while,
It does go low.
when they have to pull it down to work on the hydro.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Figure out what he's open.
So the old office building is still owned by Wood County, right?
Half of it is owned by Wood County. And the other half is owned by DePine, so.
Yeah, are we working on somehow separating that, or what's our
Yes.
plan on that?
That's part of what we're hoping to accomplish through this process. Is to work with both property owners to reunite that. In short, DMI would be willing to give up their half of it, but they want to make sure that something happens with it. As part of that. But what we ultimately anticipate the property lines to look like. It's hard these maps to get around, but, would be the dotted line is what we anticipate the ultimate property line to look like. Versus right now, the white line is where it currently is.
Okay. And they're willing to work with us on that, or what's,
So far, they've been willing to work with us on that as long as there's some sort of idea of what the next steps will be. So, and also from the village's perspective, we would recommend the village not just take it with no idea of a new user for it. Because it's more of a liability than an asset in its current state.
and the old computer data center is sold?
Yep, that got sold to Ronnie Phelps, who's he's not here.
Oh,
He recently sold the business and decided to invest money here for it. And so I think the county directed him towards this building.
have we been in touch with them?
Yes, I have been involved in. So you have too, haven't you?
Yep.
Yep. He's done a lot of work in Marshfield, apparently retrofitting, doing a lot of remodeling of existing buildings and property. He's been also, I think, he's in the tire manufacturing business. And basically, can help me know more about it.
It's right on the south side of Marshall.
Yeah.
Right around the.
What do you
Again?
wanna do?
What do you want to hear? That I can't.
Apparently he told me that he has a plant, a tire plant manufacturing in Texas. Do we know that or not?
I didn't know that.
And he said that he's in the process of maybe selling it in March, and therefore he's just looking to wait for invest the fund. He's got two sons that work with him. Apparently he can help me get a lot of construction remodeling equipment. He does quite a bit of
A lot of that stuff.
Pardon?
He does fairly quite a bit of that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I don't know. You may help me know, me in current area, but basically
I just.
he's looking for a place to start doing some more work. He did mention that he looked at this building already and decided to purchase it. He's also said he's looking at the administration building, but he says because it's tied with, the other owner, he'd like to see how that's resolved, and that's why, Scott, I think you got heard the same thing, didn't you?
Yep.
So that's why it's important. We're kind of happy to see that we got this grant at this time. We couldn't have someone else to take a look at it, so. We don't know where it's gonna go, but at least we wanna be in the front end of working with these people.
And so, part of what we're hoping to accomplish here is if we can decide or put forward a vision of what will ultimately happen with that building. That's a key thing for DMI to know in order to give the village their part of the building. We need to have another use set up for it for a lot of the grant funding that could come to help with either demolition or remodeling of that building. So we're hoping to come forward with some ideas for how to reuse it best, in order to get investment to happen on it, rather than having it sit vacant.
Seeing that the county is on the other parcel, they own the other parcel. When he's saying the village is, we're trying to be
Oh, yes.
conduit to see if we get the county and DMI, to see if we can do something with those properties instead of them just sitting like they are. They're not conducive to be something good for the village unless we can get some rehab done, or redevelopment. So that's why the counties you've been talking to the county too, right?
Yep, we've been talking to the county, talking to DMI, talking to the other surrounding property owners to get a sense of where everybody's at.
So it seems like if DMI would give up the other half of the building, we might be likely to sell this to.
Yeah, that's the idea. I think they're hoping that we can see if DMI will give it to the county, so it's only one ownership. So with it, so we can, this community can have something happen.
Also a reminder, if you didn't notice, there is a backside of the worksheet.
Oh, thanks. I was
well.
involved in that.
Sorry, I should mention that earlier.
I guess, I'm just wondering why DMI doesn't want to change that property line over. If there's a potential of them, for one, getting rid of that office building. I mean, you know, I guess I'm wondering why DMI would even. I think that would be a wise decision for them to change that property line over. So I don't know why they would wanna drag their feet on it, other than, I know that we were told by DMI when they came here, they were gonna be here at the end of December, to pull permits to start, in July, to do a plan, and they have not been here in December, we're in February. My understanding is one of their guys that was leading this has left another company.
Correct.
So, again, I'm wondering, maybe DMI should be here, and maybe we should ask them what their plan is for their future on cleaning up the property and,
Mhm.
and why they want to relinquish this property to us for, if it's monetary or whatnot. I mean, they haven't really come through with their part of their deal.
Why don't you we earlier talked about it, so why don't you repeat what?
Yeah,
you had?
to the point, yeah, we're continuing to talk with them, and I'll agree, it's been frustrating that they haven't yet submitted the demo permit. They are currently working back and forth with their contractor on signing a contract with their eventual demolition contractor. So they've been waiting on that to move forward with the demo permit stuff, is what we've been told. With this building in particular, I think DMI would be willing to give it up there. And what they've stated to me is that they just don't want it to go to the county or other entity and have it continue to sit vacant. And so they would like to see something teed up for it before they would change that property.
But this Rodney doesn't wanna purchase it while it's on my split.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
You know, I'd be like buying a house with that.
Well, right, right, no.
Somebody else does.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if they would give it to the county, he may purchase, right? So like, I feel like we're caught in a.
I don't think the
circle
county's
there.
gonna do much on their end. I would say that.
No,
That's.
I mean, I would say DMI, if you give us the property, if we can get something saying from possibly Rodney is, you know, will you purchase this building if we get DMI to give us a portion of the building? Because the county isn't gonna do it. They're just gonna sit there. It's on their,
Until they don't pay their
Right.
taxes.
Well, that's one reason why we're doing all this, is get these parties talking.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons this whole, I think is part of our project,
Yep.
the goal of this
And-
project.
Part of my goal today was kind of lay out just the facts of what the current situation is to get folks' ideas on how we should proceed with the area. And it sounds like folks are hitting on a lot of the same ideas that we've been kind of kicking back and forth ourselves.
And Scott and, his company, they have some expertise and they can maybe help at least get some rough ideas of the cost to renovate it versus demolish it and redevelop it. And so, you know, so when you guys are talking to the county and BMI, you have a little more information to know, like, you know, what, how big of a liability this is, or is it, you know, what the value might be able to come up with some feasible plans, you know, a couple options for doing something with that.
Were there any takeaways from, did you tour all the properties today? I mean, those two?
We walked around those two. We've toured the mill itself, at least the outside of it, because going inside of it would be not healthy for anybody. And we toured the YMCA building actually today, as well.
So was there, I mean, is there any like preliminary things you can say? Because when we talk about refurbishing or tearing down, we don't know the conditions of the buildings, and I kind of like to see photos of the inside.
yeah, I got it.
Yeah, there was a conditions report made in 2020, I believe.
Right, that was.
That said both buildings, if they weren't already too far gone, that they were probably too far gone. One of the things that is still in the process right now is we're having, someone at our firm take a look at those reports and also look at the configurations of the building and give their assessment on if they can be saved or not. But I think it's a fair assumption that the computer data center, Ronnie is currently gutting it, so that one will probably stay as the same structure as it is. I think it's fair that the admin building will likely be too far gone. But we're doing our due diligence to check in on that first.
How much is the grant from the DNR to do this?
20,000.
And it's not for any demolition work, it's just for like divisioning and figuring out what to do with the properties. So then if you wanted to do the demolition, that would be a separate grant.
And part of the grant is identifying what funding sources could be used for implementing it.
And when I was, I'm sorry.
Did I hear you right? Did you explain that they're waiting on contract stuff for their contractor for the demolition?
Yes, so DMI has been, they've been very close to signing a contract for, they've told us, a few months. They just keep kicking it back and forth with their demo contractor on specific terms for it. I wish I had a better timeline of when that would happen. But there's not a.
I don't think that you could tell us honestly, because frankly, I don't think they'll tell us honestly. So anything that they tell you, we'd have to take with a grain of salt. This feels a bit like a rewrite from the old script of the contractor, the contractor, the contractor. It seems to me that a contractor that would want the contract would have already had this done by now. I don't think it's about the contractor.
Yeah, and
Also, we are involved too with a permitting process. That's why the village has got ordinances for the permitting process, so we're into it also.
But they haven't applied for that, have they?
they have not.
Not yet, nope. We can't disagree with you.
I agree with what you're saying.
Lon, did you have something?
I mean, it's all good and dandy to do this stuff. We got a potential person that wants to invest in some of this. My problem is we're using a lot of taxpayers' money to keep on coming up with plans upon plans upon plans. And ultimately, we have a building that belongs to the county. Wood County doesn't even belong to the village, and then the other part belongs to another entity, DMI, that has been dragging their feet since they purchased the mill property. And I would say that if we don't set a timeline and say something needs to be done, I think we have to stop throwing dollars at making plans for situations that just aren't happening. I mean, we can make all sorts of plans. I can build a plan about a beautiful home I want in Hawaii, but sooner or later, I'm gonna have to say, is it reality? Am I gonna be able to afford it or I'm not? And to keep throwing money at contractors and decisions without having a deadline, I think we need to say, hey, I mean, even with Vanderwalt, how much are we gonna have them talk to private entities to see some result? I mean, we have other situations that we need to take care of. These are taxpayers' money, the tips. This isn't just tip money that's free. You know, it can be used for development, but if we don't have somebody that's gonna be on the same page and develop, we had DMI promising a number of things and they just haven't come through. And we can talk to her blue in the face, but talk is cheap until you get the bill for all the plans. So I think we set a deadline of how long we want to keep on beating this without we're seeing results.
Right now,
And
this,
when we see results, then it's time we can put more money towards it. I think that was the reason the TIP money, we moved some of the TIP money to street projects because we just weren't seeing anything.
okay.
Mhm.
So what you guys are doing is from a grant right now, correct?
This is funded through the DNR now.
Okay, so that's not taxpayer dollars. And then as far as the TIF,
Well, it is.
right, but it's not,
Tony Evers' back pocket more than ours, and they're happy.
Actually, it's EPA.
Right,
isn't it?
I mean, there's a difference
EPA.
between taxpayer dollars
Yeah.
here and grant dollars, is the point I'm
EPA.
trying to make.
Still, I
Got it.
don't know.
And then can I ask you, if we would want a grant from the DNR to be able to, if we would get a grant to help with demolition, would we need all of this kind of stuff in place? Like, is this kind of the precursor to the application of a bigger grant potentially for help tearing it down?
Yeah, I mean, I think DNR has some funds, WDC does, and Scott, and some other agencies and stuff too. But yeah, I mean, having some kind of a plan, either demolish and build X, Y, or Z, it would make you, put you in a better position to get some additional funding and stuff.
Sure.
So that's what we're, at this stage, that's where we're at. The other thing is I wanted to bring up, I did talk to Rodney, he is looking at this building, but he basically, from his standpoint, he's not ready to purchase it because it's tied to DMI. Second, though, he's saying that he wants to get into it and see if it is feasible to do some of it, or is it be demolished? He has got a chance to get in for that. So
What part of the building you talk about when I came with?
the administration building, whether
is he interested in demolishing it?
he may be. Depends what he can see, what he do. That's why once we knew we had this contract, this grant. And we found out that, Vanderwall is the one who was awarded the grant. And then he purchased it. I made sure I contacted him that we had this coming up. So he's very much interested in be part of the discussion.
Well, if I'd ever buy a building that's been vacant now for 16 years, you know, I mean.
He may not
When
buy a
When
building.
they were in there stripping out all the asbestos and that stuff they found, back then, some of the people were saying, might as well take her down, that's about all it's worth.
And I think he's at that point too, but it's the point if he knows his help or the process, he wants to at least know. So you got someone at least looking at it, you should be. I didn't try and say, don't be so negative that it's the point that someone else has put poking their nose underneath the tent.
Well, since
Listen,
July of 2017,
Pardon?
when I retired from the police department, became village president, July of 2017 was our first meeting with DNY. They are not gonna do anything that is gonna speed this along, because they're gonna look at all their options first and see if there's anything.
You're misunderstanding what I'm saying, Joe. There's a different people are now poking their tent underneath these buildings, and so it's not DMI, we're trying to be more looking at whoever other people are interested in.
But DNY is still a partner now.
We know
Still
that.
an owner.
We know that, and that's why myself and Scott's, and even the folks from DNR and EPA, is if we can come up with getting that building released, then that, if you look at that triangle, that becomes more of a viable redevelopment triangle for the village, and so I just think this is a good effort. At least try.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just telling you what the reality is about DNY.
And
I was here listening to it many years ago, so I'm aware.
Just so everybody's-
I think, I'd say like, we're eyes wide open about DMI
Yeah.
and all the issues there, and I think I share a lot of I do share a lot of your reservations there. For this, part of why we wanted to focus on this particular area is this is an area of the larger mill property that is most poised to actually move in the near future without having to rely on DMI promising things. And it relies a bit on it with the admin building thing, but one thing I want to make sure we have time for is in particular the first question on this worksheet, or the second question's worksheet about overall priorities. Did anybody have any thoughts on what you would like, if we were able to implement something, what types of uses would you like to see on the property? Or what's your priorities?
That's in your back page.
And I think I'm hearing a lot of, redeveloping the properties quickly would be a priority. Is that the general sense of the room?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any of the things listed here that folks think is a low priority?
Shopping cruises and a hotel.
Yeah.
I got them marked.
That's along the lines of what we thought, but wanted to pose the question. So, Steve?
And maybe that can be in the 30 to 40 years. For next time.
I'd like to hear from some of the folks who are.
So when you look at this, I mean, you say you look into the surrounding areas and everything, different communities to redevelop and stuff. You look at infrastructure. I mean, we have a major road, the old highway. If the village were to reacquire that highway for access, as you said in there, transportation was the number one growing in the area, and they're looking at warehouses. Our problem here is we do not have infrastructure for transportation. They won't put a bridge in or no blue bridge to get over there and that highway. If you had the highway going, the acquisition of that road gives EMS, emergency vehicles, access without the train track. Urkel, since they've had the thing, you can be stuck at Urkel for 45 minutes. And then you can catch this train here, you can catch that train there at Switch. Acquisition of that road again for the village would be increasing property values of sellability of that property. And if you were to put a bridge grant, get a bridge just to get across the river to our other properties, to the main highway, would also increase the property value there and the chances of selling it to a manufacturer or another economically beneficial area. I mean, does that thinking go into what you guys are doing?
No, that's a really great point. That's why we want to have this meeting, is to get ideas like that.
I mean, business is either growing or they're dying. The village is a business. If you ain't growing, you're dying. And right now, this village is dying. You can bring all the coffee shops in, all the other little bitty businesses, but someone from Rapids ain't gonna drive 3 counties or 3 cities to come to coffee. But if there's a bridge, they might come over here or come this way. I mean, our road infrastructure here's gotta change.
Thank you. What are folks' thoughts on new housing in that part of town? Would that be a spot that you think would be appropriate to put maybe some multifamily, either rentals or condos of some sort?
Yeah, depends what DMI does. If that's a warehouse and there's semi-traffic there all the time, you don't want kids.
Right.
Bottom line.
Thank you. What about one of the potential grants that could be applied for is a Knowles Nelson grant that could fund trails, kayak launches, other public recreational amenities of that sort. Given that now the county owns some lakefront property on that area, would there be interest, do you think, in something of that nature on that property?
I would say no. And we have a lake over on the other side that we were trying to develop. That's the pond. No, I don't see that. I think we have enough parks.
Okay, good to
It's
know.
also got a boat landing just upstream of the dam, and they kayak that part.
Yeah, they can rent on for people.
Right. So would not be a good spot, you think, for new public park or amenities, things like that? All right, that's helpful to know. Any other thoughts about the project? And once again, I do really sincerely appreciate the feedback on the thoughts on DMI's cooperation. I agree that's gonna be the biggest challenge of particularly the admin building. And what we're hoping through this grant to solve is that problem exactly, and get that property no longer partially owned by DMI so that it can actually have some sort of redevelopment happen to it. All right, if not, then I'll stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to talk one-on-one, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.